Good morning, Team Alabama. It is Hat Day here at school, and we are ready for a little more of Hidden Figures. Chapter 12, An Exceptional Mind. Please be making sure that you're finishing up your 50 to 70 facts. If you go over, that's extra credit points, and we'd love that. An Exceptional Mind. Please read along with me, page 93. Like Mary Jackson, Catherine Goebel was a gifted mathematician who put her talents to work as a teacher. She was quite content with her life as a wife and mother, teaching math and French in Marion, Virginia. There's a great fact. Mary Jackson taught math in Marion, Virginia. It would be years before she learned of the work being done at NACA in Hampton, but everything would change in August of 1952 when she attended a family wedding. At the wedding, Catherine's husband's brother-in-law told Catherine that the government was hiring black women to work as mathematicians at Langley. He knew that she had studied mathematics in college and graduate school. He was the director of the Newsom Park Community Center, where Dorothy Vaughan and her family lived. He knew Dorothy had quite a few of the women working for her in West Computing. Catherine listened carefully. She and her husband were public school teachers with modest paychecks. They had 3 daughters and had to manage their budget carefully to cover all of their family's needs. She enjoyed teaching and felt a sense of responsibility to advance the race by giving her students the best possible education, even though they attended segregated schools with fewer resources. But now the mention of the opportunity at Langley reminded her of something that she had almost forgotten, the dream of being a professional mathematician. After many years, it looked as if that dream might just come true. A mind for math. Catherine's father was a math whiz. Though educated only through the 6th grade, he could tell how much lumber a tree would yield just by looking at it. And from the time she was a toddler, Catherine's parents realized that she had inherited her father's mind for math. Catherine, the youngest of 4 children, counted whatever crossed her path. Dishes, steps, and stars in the sky. She excelled in school, especially in math. Whenever her teachers noticed that Catherine's desk was empty, they would look for her in the classroom next door, where they would find her helping her older brother with his math lesson. Catherine graduated from high school at the age of 14. In 1933, she enrolled at West Virginia State Institute, a black college outside of Charleston. So there's a great fact, guys. She graduated from high school at 14. So she'd done all 4 years of it by the time she was 14. And then she went to West Virginia State Institute. Okay. By her junior year, she had tackled every math course the school offered. So her math professor created special advanced math classes just for her. You would make a good research mathematician, her professor told Catherine when she was a sophomore. I am going to prepare you for this career. He believed in Catherine and her special ability, even though job prospects were poor. In the 1930s, employers openly discriminated against Irish and Jewish women with math degrees. The odds of a black woman finding work as a mathematician were especially low. After graduation, Catherine took a job teaching at the high school in Marion, Virginia. She met Jimmy Goebel, and they fell in love and married. But they kept their marriage secret. Catherine loved teaching, but at the time, the law didn't allow married women in the classroom as teachers. Unusually capable. In the spring of 1940, at the end of a busy school day, Catherine was surprised to find the president of her former college waiting outside her classroom. He said that he had a special opportunity for her. Because no graduate programs were offered at any black colleges in the state, the all-white West Virginia University could be forced to admit African Americans to their graduate program in order to comply with a Supreme Court order. If a state didn't operate a separate graduate school for black students, it would be required to integrate its existing graduate schools. Since there were no graduate programs for black students in the entire state of West Virginia, the law said that the white school had to open its doors to blacks. The governor of West Virginia didn't want to fight the law. Instead, he planned to integrate the state's public graduate schools. He asked for the names of 3 unusually capable West Virginia State College graduates who might be willing to desegregate the university. Catherine was asked to be one of the three. The other two were men who would be entering the law school. Catherine accepted a place in the graduate school studying mathematics. On her last day of teaching at the high school, Catherine's principal presented her with a full set of math reference books. He wanted her to succeed, and he feared that as one of the school's first black students, she might have trouble accessing the books that she needed at the white school's library. Catherine enrolled in West Virginia University summer session. Her mother moved to Morgantown, West Virginia, to room with her daughter, hoping to help her navigate what could be a difficult situation if the white students chose to bully her or call her names. As it turned out, most of the white students welcomed Catherine, and some went out of their way to be friendly. Only one classmate gave her any trouble, and that student just tried to insult Catherine by ignoring her. The professors treated her fairly, and Catherine more than met the academic standard. Her greatest challenge, finding a course that didn't repeat what she had already learned. At the end of the summer session, Catherine found that she and her husband were expecting a baby. Being quietly married was one thing, but having a baby was another. Catherine and her husband announced the news to her family, who were overjoyed, although they realized that she was going to have to leave school. Catherine became a full-time wife and mother. She and Jimmy eventually had 3 daughters. She never regretted putting family life ahead of graduate school. In 1944, Catherine took a teaching job at the local black high school to help support her family. She remained at the job until she learned about the opportunity at Langley in 1952, a new life. After listening to her brother-in-law describe the jobs at Langley, Catherine and her husband Jimmy decided to take the leap and move to Newport News. When they arrived, they moved into an apartment in Newsom Park. Her husband got a stable, well-paid job as a painter at the Newsom News shipyard. Their 3 children loved their new school and marveled at being part of such a large and dynamic black community. Langley's personnel department approved Catherine's job application as a computer in 1952, but she didn't start work until June of 1953. In the meantime, she worked as a substitute math teacher at the high school, which allowed her to meet a lot of families in the area. She was involved with her sorority and her church, and she developed a social network and met the women who would become a lifelong best friend. Eunice Smith, who lived 3 blocks away and was a 9-year veteran at West Computing. When Catherine started work, she and Eunice decided to drive to the office together. It was a great surprise for Catherine to find not only that her new boss, Dorothy Vaughn, was a fellow West Virginian, but that their families had once been neighbors. It didn't take long for Catherine to appreciate that Dorothy wasn't just a talented mathematician, she was also a great supervisor. For 2 weeks, Catherine worked at her new desk in West Computing, hitting the ground running. Then one morning, an engineer came into the office and quietly conferred with Dorothy. The Flight Research Division needs 2 new computers. Dorothy Vaughn announced. The Flight Research Division was a group that specialized in testing real planes rather than wind tunnels. Catherine and Irma, I'm sending the 2 of you, assigning Catherine and another West computer to the job. Confusing signals. For Catherine, being given an assignment in the Flight Research Division, whose office was on the top floor of Langley's gigantic hangar, felt like a good fortune. She had been elated. There's a great word to add to your vocab. Elated means super happy. To work in the pool and calculate her way through the data sheets. But being sent to work closely with the engineers was even more exciting. With just her lunch bag and purse to carry, Catherine went over to the hangar, which was a short walk from the West Computing office. She slipped in the side door, climbed the stairs, and walked down the dim cinder block hallway to the Flight Research Laboratory. Inside, the room smelled like coffee and cigarettes. The engineers smoked and drank coffee all day while they were working. Like West Computing, the office was set up in a classroom style with about 20 desks. Most of the people on the team were men, but there were a few other women in the group working as computers. Catherine looked for a place to wait for her new bosses. She went to an empty cube and sat down next to a white engineer. Before she had a chance to say hello, the man gave her a sideways glance and then got up and walked away. Had she done something wrong? No one else noticed what happened, but Catherine didn't know whether his actions was meant to be insulting. It could have been because she was black and he was white. It could have been because she was a woman and he was a man. It could have been because he was a professional and she was a sub-professional. Or it could have meant nothing at all. Outside the Langley campus, the rules were clear. Blacks and whites lived separately, ate separately, studied separately, socialized separately, worshiped separately, and for the most part, worked separately. At Langley, the boundaries were fuzzy. There's a great fact for you guys. Some of the colleagues were Northerners or foreigners who'd never so much as met a black person before arriving at Langley. Others were from the Deep South with strong attitudes about racial mixing. It was all part of the racial relations laboratory at Langley. Blacks and whites were exploring new ground together. Catherine and the other black mathematicians mounted a charm offensive. They made a special effort to always be well-dressed, well-spoken, patriotic, and upright. They were keenly aware that the interactions that individual blacks had with whites could have implications for the entire community. Within 2 weeks, whatever had caused the engineer to move away from Catherine's desk had faded from mind as the two got to know one another. The man was more than pleased when he discovered that his new office mate was a fellow transplant from West Virginia, and they became fast friends. West Virginia never left Catherine's heart, but Virginia, it would soon be clear, was her destiny. Okay, that's the end of chapter 12. Please go ahead and make sure you have 5 facts written about this chapter. And if you're getting close to your 50 facts, you can send them. A reminder that you're doing 10 to 15 facts about space race, the civil rights movement, and women's rights or gender equality. So 10 to 15 about each of those 3 things. Okay? Have a great rest of your day, Team Alabama.